Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're diving into something that's, well, it's so much more than just a car. It's a technological marvel, a true design icon, and a machine that pretty much broke every single rule in the book. We're talking, of course, about the story of the McLaren F1.
All right, so where do we even begin? We have to start with its single most recognizable and, let's be honest, most bizarre feature. A supercar with 3 seats? I mean, seriously, how on earth can one of the greatest performance cars ever made have a 3-seat layout? Most of them can barely squeeze in 2 people. But here's the thing. This wasn't just some gimmick to be different. No way. This was a statement of purpose. You see, the designer, the absolute legend, Gordon Murray, he had just one goal: to create the ultimate, most focused driving experience possible. And putting the driver dead center, that wasn't about cramming in extra passengers. It was all about perfect balance, perfect visibility. I mean, it was about making you, the driver, feel like you were in the cockpit of a fighter jet, not just a car. And that single philosophy, it drove every other decision they made. And believe me, that wild seating arrangement is just the beginning. To really, truly understand the soul of the McLaren F1, we've got to look under the hood. We need to talk about its absolutely legendary engine. Now, this was not some off-the-shelf engine that McLaren just picked up and dropped in. Oh no, this was a completely bespoke masterpiece, born from a partnership with BMW Motorsport. It was just pure, unadulterated Bavarian brilliance. And get this, in an era when all the competitors were starting to use turbos, this engine was all natural. No turbos, no superchargers. Just pure engineering built with exotic materials like aluminum, titanium, and forged steel to be as strong and as light as humanly possible. So, what did all that brilliant engineering get them? The result was a staggering 627 horsepower. And you have to remember, back in the early 90s, for an engine without turbos, that number wasn't just impressive, it was completely unheard of. And this, right here, just screams racing pedigree. It could rev all the way up to 7,500 RPM. This wasn't some lazy, low-revving muscle car engine. Nope. This was a high-strung, precision instrument that was literally begging you to push it to its absolute limits. So you've got all this power, all this precision. What does it all lead to? Well, it led to a top speed of 240.1 miles per hour, which they set back in 1998. That made it the fastest production car in the world. But here's the really crazy part, the real kicker. That record for a naturally aspirated car still stands today. All these decades later, it's never been beaten. Okay, but the F1's legend isn't just built on raw power and speed. Not at all. It's also about this almost cult-like following that's completely obsessed with its strange, wonderful, and, yeah, obsessive details. And this is the perfect example. The engine bay, it was lined with 16 grams of real gold foil. But, and this is key, this wasn't for bling. It wasn't for showing off. Gordon Murray chose gold for one very simple, very practical reason. It's one of the best and lightest materials for reflecting intense heat. It was a purely functional decision that just happens to look unbelievably cool. But right here, you get this incredible contrast that just perfectly defines this car. You've got this super high-tech gold foil heat shield, right? But then, for decades, if something went wrong with your multi-million-dollar F1, you want to know how McLaren diagnosed it? Remotely, using a built-in dial-up modem, you know, the squealing kind, and an ancient compact laptop running DOS. It's this wild fusion of cutting-edge tech and charmingly retro solutions it's a huge part of its magic. And really, it's these little quirks that give the car so much personality. For instance, it has no power steering. Why? Because that would dilute the pure, raw feedback you get from the road. It even came with its own set of custom-fitted luggage. And the owners, they're not just collectors who lock these things away. They're drivers. You've got enthusiasts like Jay Leno, of course, and then there's Rowan Atkinson, yeah, Mr. Bean, who drove his for over 100,000 miles. He even crashed it twice and had it repaired both times. That's dedication. But look, this car was never meant to be just some fantastically engineered toy for the rich and famous. To truly become a legend, the McLaren F1 had to prove itself in the ultimate arena. We're talking about the brutal 24-hour crucible of Le Mans. I mean, just think about that for a second. The F1 was basically a road car competing against purpose-built, faster racing prototypes. When McLaren took it to Le Mans, the world's most demanding race, it was a massive underdog. At its heart, it was a street car they'd converted for the track. It wasn't even supposed to be in the same league as the dedicated race cars it was up against.
The year was 1995. And what happened? It won. I mean, the McLaren F1 GTR, the racing version, it didn't just compete, it didn't just finish well. It shocked the entire motorsport world by winning the whole thing, outright. A road car had beaten the purpose-built prototypes. It was a completely impossible victory that cemented the F1's place in history forever.
So you have this incredible combination, right? This bizarre design, this raw, naturally aspirated power, and then this impossible victory on the world's biggest stage. All of that came together to cement its legacy. So what exactly is that legacy worth today? How about over $20 million? That's not a typo. These cars now regularly sell for more than 20 million bucks at auction. They've completely transcended being just cars. At this point, they're considered blue-chip art investments, making them one of the most valuable and sought-after collector cars on the entire planet.
And you know what? Its design philosophy was so pure, so powerful, that its influence is still being felt today. Just look at the spiritual successors to the F1. You've got McLaren's own Speedtail, and then you have the T50, which comes from the F1's original designer, Gordon Murray himself. And what do they both have in common? They've brought back that iconic three-seat central driving position. But to really get the F1's importance, you gotta look at the world it came from. The McLaren Formula One team alone is valued at a staggering $4.4 billion. And even at that crazy number, it's not the most valuable team out there. This is a sport of absolute financial giants. So you see, this car isn't just some standalone marvel. It's a defining artifact from one of the most technologically advanced, high-stakes, and valuable sports on the face of the earth. It really represents this one perfect moment in time when a top-tier racing team decided to pour every last bit of its knowledge and ambition into creating the ultimate road car. So, in the end, what truly creates a legend like this? Is it the numbers it breaks, or is it the rules it rewrites? You know, the numbers, the top speed, the horsepower, that insane price tag, they're all astonishing. But what makes the McLaren F1 a true eternal legend is that it didn't just break records. It completely rewrote the rules of what a supercar could even be. The truth is, it did both. And that right there is why decades later, we're all still talking about it.